Hello and welcome to the Football Malarkey podcast. I am Simon Doyle, and as the title suggests, we'll be talking some absolute ramble about football, all things football. I am myself a Manchester United fan, but I will be delving into all things football in this podcast. Mostly focusing on the Premier League, although I do watch a bit of Bundesliga, La Liga and Serie A. I also live in Toronto, so watch a bit of TFC in the MLS, who've recently just had a coaching change as well. And yeah, this is episode 1. So, thanks for joining. Okay, so this is January 14th, 2021. Last night we had Brighton and Hove Albion by Manchester City, as well as Tottenham and Fulham. So you had a 1-1 draw. Starting first with the Manchester City game. It was a tight game. It finished 1-0 to Manchester City in the end, but this is a season of tight games. I think owing to the fixture congestion, as much as anything else, as well as a lack of pre-season, particularly for the teams that went far in Europe at the end of last season. So United and City in particular. The lack of pre-season has caused, well, it's given them a lack of proper preparation. So they've come into this season on the back of some poor preparation and basically using the start of the season as their pre-season to set them up for the rest of the year, which is not ideal. And obviously it costs you points, and we've seen that for Manchester City and Manchester United in the early stages of this season. But both teams have turned a corner since, I'd say, approximately late October, early November. Been a lot more consistent since then. In the game last night, City had come off the back of obviously beating Chelsea 3-0 last week, and then United 2-0 in the League Cup semi-final. Which were the game against Chelsea was definitely their best performance of the season. Against United, they were also the better team. They weren't as dominant as they were against Chelsea. They carved Chelsea open. I think Chelsea played into their hands a little bit. But against United, they were the better team, but they didn't carve United open. Both goals came from set pieces. And they didn't really make any other clear-cut chances. Not major chances. De Bruyne hit the post with a good chance from just outside the box. But other than that, United defended pretty solidly in open play. But set pieces have been an Achilles heel for United all season and have proved so again in that League Cup tie, and City took full advantage. I thought defensively they have looked a lot more solid recently since Diaz and John Stones have struck up a good partnership. Ruben Diaz is a good purchase from Benfica. He's I think 24, 25, Portuguese. He's 6'2". He's a bit more of a defensive centre back than, to use a hockey analogy, a hockey term. They usually divide the defensive players into an offensive defenseman or a defensive defenseman. And in football, you do see in the modern age, there are plenty of defenders who are better, whose primary job is to progress the ball from the back and to be involved in build-up play, and to even in some teams be integral to their attacking play. But Diaz is he's a defender first. He's physical. He's good in the air. He's a good tackler. He definitely controls that back line very well. He's well organised, and he struck up a good relationship with a re-emerging John Stones, who we all thought was left out in the cold by Pep Guardiola. Thought we'd seen the last of John Stones at Manchester City. And that when they signed Diaz, I assumed he would strike up a partnership with Aymeric Laporte. Now, I still think in the long term that will be Manchester City's plan, is to have Diaz and Laporte together, considering as well Diaz is a right footer, Laporte to the left, and considering how much they love to keep the ball, we know that build-up play is integral to what Manchester City do, and having a right footer and a left footer in your centre half pairing can be a vital asset in build-up play, particularly against teams who are going to press you very well. I know Aymeric Laporte has had injuries, and he's definitely had one at the moment, I think, that's keeping him out. But I also think it seems as though Pep Guardiola thinks he's struck a bit of gold here with this relationship between Stones and Diaz. We'll never know. Maybe that was always the plan. It doesn't seem like it from the outside. It seems like Diaz has bought into partner Laporte. Laporte has been, after Van Dijk, you'd have to say, he's probably been the best centre back in the Premier League for the last couple of seasons. So it would be quite a surprise if Laporte has been pushed out of the Manchester City starting 11. If he has, there will be no shortage of clubs who would be happy to take him off Manchester City's hands. As I said, I am a Manchester United fan, and I think Laporte would slot into centre-back perfectly at Manchester United, whether it's beside Harry Maguire or beside Eric Bailly. We don't have a left-footed centre-back besides Marcus Rojo, but he doesn't really count anymore. Now, do I see Manchester City selling Juan Laporte? Or, I keep calling him Juan Laporte. I'm thinking of Juan Laporta, the former Barcelona CEO or whatever he was. Selling Laporte to United, no. But there's only so long. If you tell Laporte he's third choice now, I'm sure he'll look to leave. Now, I'm sure the Spanish clubs and Bayern Munich and Juventus and PSG would all be queuing up to take him from Manchester City. But let's say they couldn't. Let's say they couldn't afford him, whether through the transfer fee or through his wages or both. It probably is more likely that a Premier League club like Manchester United, like Liverpool, like Chelsea, would be the only teams able to afford him, particularly at the moment, given obviously the COVID situation causing most teams to lose some of their revenue, much of their revenue actually, and the Premier League teams haven't been as badly hit because their TV deal is so significantly greater than pretty much anything else in the world. So I think City are treading a fine line with that one. I don't think they can just tell him he's third choice and think that he's going to carry on and be happy with that situation. He would have thought that his performances have merited his starting place in the team. At the same time, there is only so much that you can rely on a player who does seem to get as consistently injured as he does. Even though John Stones fell out of favour, he never really had the injury issues over the last few years that Laporte has had. So is it that Pep has reached a bit of a breaking point with Laporte and his injuries and thought, I can't rely on him going forward, and therefore he's happy to have Stones and Diaz as the starting pair? That might be the case, particularly since they have Ake and the young lad Eric Garcia there to back up as well, and Fernandinho obviously plays at centre back now more than he does in midfield. Again, I would be very surprised if Laporte's going to leave, but it is a curious one. If he comes back, do you say, okay, thanks John Stones, but you're back on the bench after he's played so well and struck up such a good partnership with Diaz? Do you try to see out the season with these two and tell Laporte to get his chance again in pre-season to impress? Again, is he going to be happy with that? Is he going to start telling his agent, best look for a move? I think Laporte is 27, I want to say. 26 at least. So he's hitting his prime, Laporte. I might be getting his age wrong, but I don't think he's younger than that. I could be wrong. But I think Laporte is hitting his prime years. If not right now, then them very soon. He's not going to want to spend them. A player of his level is not going to want to spend his prime years as third choice because of a managerial selection. If he does have to accept perhaps that his injuries limit him, and that he can maybe not hold down a first team spot all the time in a top level team because he's not available enough, he might accept that. But I don't know. I think they're treading a fine line there, Manchester City. They did win last night. Like I said, they won 1-0. Could have been 2-0. Sterling missed a penalty right at the end, which was a penalty. De Bruyne, I think it was taken down by the goalkeeper when he went 1-on-1. But Brighton were good. They gave City a headache. I thought, particularly in the second half, they didn't, when they won the ball, they seemed to be happy to push City back. They're good at passing the ball around, Brighton. I would argue among the teams in the bottom 8 at least, and I think Wolves are in there right now, and you could argue Wolves are just as good, but I think they are definitely one of the better teams in the bottom half, if not the best team in the bottom half, at keeping possession and looking to push a team back to their own net and creating chances from there with a bit of width, and their fullbacks got forward very well last night, particularly the lad on the left. I think it was Bernardo is his name. They're missing Tyreek Lamptey at the moment. I think he's injured, but they're playing a 3-5-2, or 3-4-3, I think it was. Their fullbacks were heavily involved in the build-up and created a couple of chances, particularly on the left. As I said, Bernardo was good. But for a team that looks to push a team back and create chances from there, I think they thought, you know what, City don't get tested enough in a low block situation. Let's see if we can push them back and pick them apart. I thought that was a decent plan to have, but there was a lack of aggression then from their passing or crossing to really test the City centre backs. They don't have a tall striker. Danny Welbeck was missing, but they don't have someone in there who could be a bit of an aerial threat and maybe jostle the centre backs a bit more and maybe create a bit of space inside the box. So I feel like when they got to the edge of the box, they did create one or two chances, but I feel like there was a lack of aggression with their play once they got to that stage. They had a lot of quick players in the pitch, small quick players. Trossard, Mopé came on, I think. I don't think he started. I think he came off the bench. And who's the Argentinian lad, McAllister? They're good players, but if you've got players with that much who are decent on the counter attack, like they have a bit of pace in that front three, they didn't use it to counter attack. They didn't look to pick apart the holes in the City shape when they won the ball, Brighton. Now, like I said, maybe that was they wanted to slow the game down a bit, keep the ball more, so they weren't just giving it back to City when the counter attacks failed and then falling back on their own into their own low block again every time City won the ball, which is fair. I understand that. I just felt that for the amount of possession they had, they didn't really test the City defence enough. Now, having said that, the introduction of Diaz has greatly improved that Manchester City defence. They look a lot more organised. They look more solid and assured, particularly when they are in that low block situation. I think in previous years, they kept the ball so much that you rarely saw them in that situation. They were so good at winning the ball up high, the way they counter-pressed once they lost it, which has dropped off a bit since. That you rarely saw them in that situation, so they didn't really need to be tested, or they didn't get tested, so they didn't need to be great in those low block situations. But they were also the days where they had company at centre back, who was also a very strong organiser of the back four. But I could see what Brighton were thinking. I just think they, like I said, whether they didn't have the right tools or just not the right mindset or the right plan of attack once they got into that final third, that's what I don't know. But their game plan somewhat worked. They definitely gave City a test. but I think that was 9 clean sheets in their last 11 games for Manchester City. So that for me spells out the impact that Ruben Diaz has had since he arrived at the end of the transfer window, which was in early October, I think, this year. Obviously an unusual one. Phil Foden got the goal again. And I think Foden's really come into his own these last couple of months. I think he's starting to cement a place in that City team finally. We knew he was a very talented player, but it seemed like maybe they were just waiting for the likes of David Silva to move on before he really looked to cement a place in the team. And he's doing that now, whether playing in an attacking midfield position or from the wing. It's normally from the wing. City prefer 4-2-3-1 these days, with Rodri and Gundogan sitting deepest and then De Bruyne ahead of them. I think that team kind of picks itself at the moment, that midfield. But you have players like Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden who could also play in attacking midfield roles and could do it very well. But City don't play with those two free eights anymore like they did when De Bruyne and David Silva were at their best. It's normally just De Bruyne on his own in the number 10 role now, and you see Foden or Bernardo Silva start out wide. But Foden, he is a creative type, but he's also quite quick. He's much quicker than David Silva ever was. He's got a bit of pace about him, and I think he took his goal very well. They made an overload on that left hand side, City, and Foden worked an opportunity to receive the ball just in front of the box, skipped in front of his fullback and let a shot off at the near post, which snuck in between the post and the keeper. I think the keeper was a bit suspect for that goal. If you look at his positioning, he was a bit too central. You know, he didn't really shore up his near post as he should have. Now at the angle Foden was coming in and onto his right foot, he most likely, in most situations, most players would go for that far corner, and that's probably what the goalkeeper was thinking. He was trying to buy himself a few inches, which I can understand, but he gave up that near post, and Phil Foden with laser accuracy put it right inside the near post, low and hard. So good finish from Foden. Bit suspect from the goalkeeper, but City did deserve to get that goal and win the game. Well, I think 1-0 was a fair result. I think, like I said, Brighton did well, but they didn't test City enough. They didn't walk away with enough chances to think, we should have got away with a draw there today. They defended pretty well otherwise. I think in the second half particularly, City didn't make much. Not until the end when Brighton were looking to grab an equaliser and they threw a few more men forward and got caught a bit in the counter-attack, and that's what led to that penalty situation which Sterling absolutely skied. He's not been his best, Sterling, in the last year or so. He's fallen off a bit. I think City don't quite dominate the ball like they used to, not at the same levels, and I think he was a perfect player at that time to finish off a lot of their attacking moves, and obviously he was integral to the move as well, but he'd always be that guy in and around the box that you'd be worried about the ball falling to. And they don't quite play the exact same way as they did 2 seasons ago. I think that's had a bit of a negative effect on him. He's not quite as integral as he was. He's still a brilliant player, Sterling, but he's not. I don't think he's as much of a focal point for City as he was. I think players like Phil Foden and you could even argue Riyad Mahrez are becoming a bit more focal to the way they attack at the moment. And then after that game we had Tottenham Hotspur and Fulham finish 1-1. Tottenham, I thought, started the better team, and they made a few chances in that first half where you thought they look like they're in the mood and they're really gonna give Fulham a bit of a hiding. And they got that one goal from Harry Kane. It was a very good goal, very well worked. The ball went out to Reguilon on the left. He was given Spurs width on the left hand side. They kind of played a bit of an asymmetric system, Spurs, where when they attacked, Serge Aurier mostly stayed back and kept a defensive position, while Reguilon was allowed bomb up and down the left hand side, and he did so to pretty devastating effect in that first half, sending in some good crosses, one right to the head of Harry Kane. He buried it. And Spurs are well worth their lead in the first half, I thought. I thought Ndombele looked good. He looks like he's playing with a bit more freedom at the moment, which is good to see, particularly in a Jose Mourinho team. He doesn't typically allow his midfielders a whole lot of freedom, but it looks like Ndombele's carved out a role for himself in his team. And I thought he looked good last night. Son was very lively, as he always is. I think Son's a brilliant player. I think he's the most dynamic, arguably the most dynamic forward in world football. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And he had that one chance where he hit the post in the second half. He could have made it 2-0. And I think a lot of the post-match talk was a bit about that. And I think Mourinho suggested, I don't know, I can't remember his exact quotes, but I think he kind of hinted that, Son missing the chances that he did, particularly the one out the post, was what cost Spurs the win. Now, Spurs fans, as a Man United fan, I can tell you, this is what Jose does. What I saw last night was what I saw countless times at Old Trafford in the couple of years that we had Jose in charge. We drew a lot of games at home that we shouldn't have drawn. And a lot of the time, we would make 2 to 3, maybe 4 decent chances. And if we didn't take them, it was, what do you expect? You have to score them if you want to win. And to a certain degree, he's right. But I don't think that's you can say that in the bigger games. You can say that in the big games, those are the margins that you need to make sure you get the better of those margins if you're going to win most of the big games you play. But when you're playing Fulham at home and you're treating them like they're Liverpool, I disagree with that approach, and I disagree with it when he was United boss. I always backed Jose. I obviously his credentials speak for themselves, and United was the first club that he came to where he, since being at Porto, where he didn't win the league. There were other factors as to why he didn't win the league, but I always thought that there was a restriction, like as if some of our players are playing in straitjackets at times, at home against smaller teams, when we really just needed to let the reins go and let the players do what they do and keep pushing the opposition back and keep trying to hammer home. And yeah, sometimes you'll get caught out, and I think he has this idea that, I think Jose often approaches games with the idea of, I'm going to suppress their strengths first, and then this is how we're going to score goals. And I think that players get tired of that after a while. I think that particularly top players like Harry Kane and Son, and obviously at United he had Pogba and Ibrahimovic. Ibrahimovic seemed to get on very well with Mourinho, but I think they were the problems that started with Pogba and Martial and a few others, where they couldn't get their head around why there were so many restrictions on them when going forward. Not only on them, but on the team. And I just don't think it pays off, particularly in modern football, for the modern player to approach games in the way that Jose Mourinho does. I think, yes, sometimes you will get caught out. If you look at, I think the antithesis to Jose Mourinho was Sir Alex Ferguson, in that he couldn't stand not having a go with a team. He always wanted to see something, a bit of spark. He wanted to see his team go at the opposition in almost every game. He couldn't stand to see his team be restrictive, to restrict themselves and to play with fear, that fear that, they might get caught out. And sometimes we did get caught out. It did lose the odd game where you thought, how the hell did we lose to them? There was many a game where some of the smaller teams came to Old Trafford and they'd nick all 3 points, or they'd nick a point, because we left gaps. which is why we needed such top level centre backs and goalkeepers to ensure that sometimes they had to take responsibility for the result almost, because it was up to them to repel those counter attacks while the rest of the team push forward and bomb forward and try to get that winner. Jose Mourinho seems to think the other way around. He thinks, no, I'm going to make sure that they don't do that to us, and then we're going to try win the game from there. And surprise, surprise, sometimes they look a bit blunt, both Spurs and his Manchester United team, many a times, particularly at home, where the smaller teams are more than happy to leave with what they arrived with, which is a point. The game starts at 0-0, and most of these teams that arrive at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or at Old Trafford are more than happy to get back on that bus with that point, with that 0-0 or 1-0, whatever it might be. And Jose, I don't think, takes the game enough to these teams. I don't think his teams put those teams in a state of panic enough. I think sometimes the game is far too easy for them. I think in the second half, Fulham were much the better team on the ball. I thought in the second half. I think Jose seemed to have made the decision that, okay, and maybe it's not Jose's direct instructions. Maybe it's just the mentality that he instills in the team throughout training sessions and throughout his team talks. But they definitely seem to play with this restriction, Spurs, in the second half, to think, all right, we're going to let Fulham come out a bit, and they're going to leave a bit of space, and we're going to pick them off, and we're going to go score 2, 3, maybe 4. And I remember particularly in United's second season under Jose, in the first half of that season, we did that a lot. And we called ourselves 4-0 FC for a while, because we won a fair few games 4-0, where we did exactly that. We scored a goal or two, maybe, in the first 70, 75 minutes, through being the better team a little bit, but not exactly playing the other team off the park. And then from there, we'd invite them out and then counter-attack and pick off any gaps that they left. And it worked for a stretch. But then there's other games where it becomes too negative, and it seems it can take one result to change the team's fortunes, and to make the players, to bring a bit of disbelief into their mindset and in the belief they seem to have in the approach. With United, we saw that when we were either top or we were not far behind City in that 2017-18 season, and we went to Anfield, and at the time Liverpool were not playing well. They were mid-table, and we went there and we played like they were the modern Liverpool of today, and we got a 0-0 draw, and it was a particularly poor performance. And that seemed to kill the momentum of the team. It seemed to kill a bit of the belief in what they were being asked to do. And I just wonder if, not that this result against Fulham or any of their most recent results, which haven't been great overall, have done that for Spurs, but I feel like there's a breaking point with players at this level, with Jose Mourinho's approach. And listen, Jose Mourinho has probably forgotten more about football than I or most people who criticise him ever will know. But it's been 5 years, 2015, so almost 6 years since he won his last league title with Chelsea. And even in the second half of that season, his team looked very restricted, having played some quite open and attractive football in the first half of that season. Since then he seems to have lost a bit of his spark, and he has won some trophies in between then, obviously, but we know the season after that he absolutely collapsed and he left Chelsea in mid-table. The following season, came to United, did okay, didn't do what we brought him in to do, and again, there was other factors at play there. It wasn't all his doing at all. Our board were largely to blame as well. But he then created division within the team, and there was that point where we got knocked out by Sevilla in the Champions League, where I, as a United fan, that was the first time I thought there's something not right about Jose at the moment. And he said those comments about football heritage or whatever nonsense he was talking at the time. And I think I and a lot of United fans thought that's strike one. You know, you gotta watch yourself. You don't come to United and say, oh well, of course we should be losing to Sevilla. You're in the wrong place, pal. And we got to this FA Cup final that season, and I thought, okay, hasn't been a great season. Finished second. Bad exit from the Champions League, but we got to a final in the FA Cup. This is what Jose does. He gets to finals and he wins them. It's against his old team, Chelsea. Win the FA Cup, get some good signs in the summer, and we'll go from here. And then we lost. We lost that FA Cup to Chelsea, and I thought, strike two. Not just because we lost. Any manager can lose a game, lose a final. But we were so poor, so tepid in that final. We never gave Chelsea a game. And Chelsea weren't even that good. Conte was on the way out. He looked fed up. They didn't have a great second season under him. And we looked tepid. We didn't really give Chelsea a proper game. And we handed them the FA Cup. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to win and they didn't play better. They did. But what I mean by that is we just didn't show up at all. And then that summer he didn't get the signings he wanted, which wasn't his fault. And then he started talking quite disparagingly about the young players in our squad. And he blew up after we lost a pre-season game to Liverpool in the States. And I think most United fans from there thought this isn't going to go well. Now, I still backed him because I still believed ultimately he's Jose Mourinho. He's won the league at every other club he's been at. Must be something that we're doing wrong. There was definitely a lot that United were doing wrong. But Jose did not help himself, and he made the situation worse. And I just wonder, I'm getting a bit off topic here, but I just wonder where the breaking point is for Spurs with Jose Mourinho. You know, is there a point where the likes of Harry Kane and Son kind of say, you know, not sure this is worth it for me anymore. If I get a move, I can. You know, they're both in their prime years now. They probably only have 2 or 3 years left each where they're going to be in their physical prime at the most. So, you know, are they going to be happy to stick around and see what happens with Spurs? Maybe. They're good characters, both of them, but I don't know, I wouldn't blame them for thinking they could finish their career with a few trophies if they made a move somewhere else. Fulham, like I said, Fulham, they played very well in that second half, I thought, and they were the better team. They were building up from the back a bit better. They played with that back three. Their strikers were causing Spurs a few problems. Ademola Lookman came on and definitely gave Spurs a torrid time. At the back, he created the goal, which was a very good goal. Kind of similar to the Spurs one. He was on the left-hand side and created a bit of a 2v1 situation and dribbled his way into a crossing opening. Sent a good ball across, and Caballero headed home with a very, very powerful header. And they deserved the equaliser for them. In the post-match press conference, Jose mentioned individual mistakes, and I think like I referenced earlier, he was talking about the chances they missed, and particularly Son Heung-min hitting the post, which would have put them 2-0 up and maybe would have put the game to bed. But to be honest, I don't think it was individual mistakes that cost Spurs. It looked like a collective retreat in the second half, and almost a collective sense of fear that Fulham were going to equalise, and that if they kept attacking Spurs, that Fulham were going to catch them out. And I just can't get behind. I can't get behind that mindset when playing Fulham at home when you're Tottenham and you have the players that they have and you have the manager that they have. So it's not good for Spurs. On the other hand, they're obviously not that far off the top. If they can turn a few more of these frustrating draws into wins, they'd be top. Now, there's many teams at the moment that can say, well, if we just change 2 or 3 results, we'd be top 2. It's very tight in the top 8 or 9 positions. And yeah, that makes sense. But I think particularly Spurs, if you look at some of their draws at home, or even that away draw with Palace a few weeks ago where they were winning the game into the last few minutes and they threw that one away as well. Again, with the same approach, they dropped off and thought, okay, Palace, you come at us and we'll catch you on the counter. They didn't, and then they, surprise, they conceded from asking the team to come and attack them. Any team in the Premier League can hurt you if you give them enough time and space. So for me, that's something that Spurs have to overcome. That's something that Spurs have to eradicate, and they have to be a bit bolder and be a bit more on the front foot. But I'm not sure that's in Jose's makeup. I'm not sure he's going to change in that respect. I'm not sure. Jose was also asked about the January transfer window. We know he loves a transfer, Jose, and he said he expects nothing. He doesn't expect anyone to come in. Do I think there's a transfer out there that would make a big difference to Spurs at the moment? Not really. I think they could maybe do with a bit more pace up front, because besides Son, like, Kane's not fast. Lucas doesn't really get much of a look in at the moment. He should play Gareth Bale a bit more, I feel. So maybe the players are there if you consider Bale and Lucas. Lamela is pacey enough, but he's not got enough of an end product in attack for me. I think he's more of a defensive forward who's gonna work hard and fit into a system well, Lamela, but I don't expect too much end product from him in terms of goals and assists. They have a solid team, Spurs. Otherwise, I'm not really sure what personnel changes I would make. Like, if you had, Steven Bergwijn. I'm forgetting about Steven Bergwijn, who's also got a bit of pace. So maybe I've just forgotten a couple of players there. I think they do have the personnel they need. I think Bale. I think Bergwijn starts a lot of games. I'm not sure if he's injured now at the moment. I don't think he featured last night. But Gareth Bale, I think, is certainly being underutilized. If he's not pulling his weight, send him back to Real Madrid. I'm sure they had that in the contract, the loan contract, that if he's not pulling his weight, you can send him back. Because right now he's not really worth. I'm not sure exactly what they're paying him, but I'm sure it's not cheap, and he's playing the role of a fourth choice winger at the moment. He's not that heavily involved. So I think Bale and perhaps Lucas and definitely Bergwijn need to be utilised a bit more. I think they can, particularly if you're going to play in the counter-attack. You can't rely on Son that much, you know. You need something else for me, and I think they need another threat. But again, I think they have it there. I don't think they necessarily need a transfer to make that change. So, will that satisfy Jose? I don't think so, because he always seems to want another player. He always has another transfer idea up his sleeve. So I'm not convinced he'll be happy, but he knew what he was getting into when he went to Spurs. Daniel Levy is not exactly known for whipping the checkbook out whenever the manager calls for it. So yeah, all right. Moving on then. Looking ahead this weekend, Arsenal and Palace played today. They played a 0-0 draw. I didn't get to see the match, so not really fair to comment on it. That's the first draw for Arsenal in 4 games. I think they won their previous 3, which is an upturn in form for them. Obviously, they were going through a very, very bad stretch before that. I do think Mikel Arteta needs time. I've seen a lot of Arsenal fans criticising him and saying he needs to leave now as well, and I just think you're reminding me of a lot of Manchester United fans. Some of them are still doing it, but up until recently, it was constantly, if the results are bad, well, change the manager. And I think too many people are getting hung up on exactly what a manager does. This isn't Football Manager or FIFA. He's not out there controlling every little action that every player makes, and therefore if you just get someone who has a better idea, he'll come in and he'll be better. It doesn't work like that. You have to consider what he walked into and what they want to be. Obviously, Arsenal see themselves as a top four club, a Champions League club. They've won the third highest amount of English titles. So after United and Liverpool, it's Arsenal next to, I think, have, I want to say 11. Something like that. United have 20, Liverpool 19, and Arsenal are next. I think 11 is the number that they have. Obviously, Chelsea and City have caught up on them a little bit in recent years, but Arsenal are still have the third highest amount of league titles in England. And so when people criticise them and say they're a small club, they're not. They are a very big club, Arsenal. They're well known historically for having a certain classiness to them. I think Sir Alex Ferguson described them as the classiest club in England. Just the way they conduct themselves on and off the pitch. Now, before Arsene Wenger came along, they were known for being a very solid defensive side. The 1-0 to the Arsenal obviously was famous for a reason. They won a lot of games 1-0, particularly under George Graham. Made them very solid defensive outfit, and they'd nick a lot of games 1-0. They won the league title obviously in I think it was 1989. Was it 89? But that famous last day win against Liverpool. But the Arsenal that Mikel Arteta walked into was a far cry from the Arsenal of even 10 years ago. Arsenal 10 years ago, they weren't winning league titles, but they were constantly in the top four. They were constantly in the Champions League. They played arguably the best football in the country. And Arsene Wenger relied on the young talents of obviously Cesc Fabregas and Samir Nasri, Robin van Persie. They had some fantastic players, and it seemed like whenever one was gone out the door, another one was already there ready to take his place, or they had one lined up. His eye for a player, Arsene Wenger, particularly from France, was incredible. He'd pluck some players from absolutely nowhere and they turn into world beaters. But eventually that dried up a bit, and eventually too many players weren't satisfied with being the prettiest football team in the country. They wanted to win things. They wanted proper silverware. And Arsenal always lacked that edge that was needed to get them over the line. And it was well known. I remember every time Manchester United played against Arsenal at the time, particularly away from home, when we went to the Emirates, we'd do the same thing every time. We'd sit in a low block and we counter-attack them, and it worked. Every time things didn't go exactly the way they wanted it, they'd lose their heads a bit and they'd lose their grip and they'd collapse. And that steel that they used to have when they had that 04 team that they call the Invincibles, that team had the guile and the technique and the fluidness, and they were a superb team in attack, and they would play with this magnificent flow with these incredible players like Vieira, Pires, Ljungberg, Bergkamp, Henry, even Ashley Cole and Lauren bombing up from fullback. And they were a superb team to watch, but that team also had a lot of steel to it. They played the prettiest football, but you didn't want to pick a fight with the likes of Vieira or Gilberto Silva or Sol Campbell, Kolo Toure at centre back. Lauren, Henry and Bergkamp could handle themselves physically. They were a tough side, and I think Arsene Wenger thought that football was moving in a different direction where size wasn't important. And physicality wasn't important. But I think he went too far with it. He was right in that the physicality has dropped off since that age. It has. But not to the degree I think that he thought it would. I think he thought he was getting ahead of the game a bit by having a lot more smaller technical footballers who were obviously technically elite and could pass the ball around for days. But I don't think the game changed as much as he thought it would. And I think the era of the counter press and the Gegen pressing and all that, the emphasis on pressing and this high level of physical exertion in the modern game, I don't think he was prepared for that, and I think that's why his teams declined over time and why Arsenal fans thought it was best he moved on. And I agreed with Arsenal fans towards the end. Now I think the whole Wenger out campaign was absolutely ridiculous. Some people went way over the top, and that man didn't deserve near the amount of criticism or just pure insults that he got. It was a bit disgraceful, particularly from certain sections of YouTube, which I won't mention, but I could understand their desire to move on to someone new. I understood it. Now, I thought Emery was a bit of a average appointment at the time, particularly with him having next to no English as well. I didn't think that was the best idea. But he did pretty well in his first 6 months anyway. Things declined a bit in the second half of the season, and then obviously in his second season they seemed to fall apart altogether. But is it any surprise that Mikel Arteta has come in and had very similar problems to his two predecessors, in that players don't seem to be pulling their weight a lot of the time? They're not up for the fight. Some players seem to have some behavioural issues. These are problems he inherited. And does he have a board above him who are happy to chop and change and make what changes are necessary to the squad? It doesn't seem like it. Arsenal's board remind me a lot of United's board, not just because they're both American, but they both seem to be very content with owning these big clubs who make a lot of money, and they just sit on that money and they say thank you very much, keep doing what you're doing, good lads. And as long as they're not getting relegated, they're fine, because if they're in the Premier League, if they're in the news headlines for right or wrong, it generates revenue for them. They're getting big TV money for being in the Premier League. They mostly make the Europa League, if not the Champions League, so that they're getting that the European income as well, and they're happy with that. They come from owning NFL teams. In the NFL and in all North American sports, one team can win a trophy per season pretty much, because they don't count the conference trophies as much. But if you're not getting to finals of whatever it is, the Super Bowl or the NBA, whatever it is, you're not doing much. You're just middle of the road, and that's what most teams are doing over there. And if they do really badly, well, they get draft picks and they get to bring through the next best young thing and try and build from there. It's a completely different way it's a completely different model of sporting organisation. That's why I can't stand when people call a football club a franchise. It's not a franchise. A franchise is when you buy a piece of something. You own a piece of something. You own naming rights, and you're part of a bigger corporation. If I buy I'm in Canada, so if I buy a Tim Hortons, I'm buying a franchise. I get to call it Tim Hortons. It is a Tim Hortons. I do what Tim Hortons do. If you buy an NFL team, you are part of the NFL. You are buying a piece of the NFL. You are buying into the NFL. If I set up a football club in Europe, I'm not tied to any competition. I would enter at a certain point and try work my way up. But if you're a club that's in the Premier League, you're not a franchise of the Premier League. You are a separate entity. You are a football club on its own. If the Premier League fell apart tomorrow, the football clubs would still exist and they could make a new competition. Call it whatever. If the NFL fell apart tomorrow, all those organizations are gone because they're a franchise. They're part of the bigger corporation. That's the difference between a franchise and a football club. And owning a football club in England is a completely different barrel of fish to own a franchise in any North American sport. It does not work the same way. And fans of football clubs, particularly ones with tradition and historic success, are not going to react the way fans do of NFL teams. I see. I like I said, I live here in Toronto, and I see it when teams. I pay attention mostly to the hockey. I do like hockey. I notice that when teams aren't doing so well, yeah, fans complain and they don't like it, but it depends on who. Like Toronto fans are particularly crazy about the Maple Leafs, but in Ottawa, for example, fans just don't go to games. Just, team aren't doing well. Call me when they're doing well again. And so, yeah, they don't want the stadium to be empty, but they take their time and they build up over a few years and try and reach a certain point where they're saying, hey, we're doing pretty well. Do you want to come back? Do you want to watch us? And then fans start saying, oh yeah, that sounds fun. You don't get that kind of attitude with football clubs in Europe. You just don't. And in England particularly, and with a club like Arsenal in particular, you have to be very, very careful the way you conduct yourself when you buy a football club in England, particularly a big one. And I think Kroenke, who's the American owner of Arsenal, does something very similar to what the Glazers do with Manchester United, which is they treat it like an NFL franchise, and they're happy to just sit on mediocrity and take their revenue checks. I think Arsenal and Manchester United are the only clubs where their owners try and take revenue out of the club. United definitely do it. I think Arsenal do, or they at least try to. And the team suffers on the pitch because of that, because it gets overtaken by clubs with actual ambition, like Liverpool, Chelsea and Manchester City. Even Spurs have more ambition. They don't loosen the purse strings, but they're a very, very well run club. And Daniel Levy is always trying to, as much as he might be a pain in the arse in some ways, he's always trying to ensure that Spurs are going in the right direction, that they're healthily run, that they're not spending more than what's coming in, and that they have their sights set on their long-term future. And you can see that by their new stadium as well, which is absolutely incredible. So yeah, I do think the situation that Mikel Arteta inherited at Arsenal is not favourable. He has a lot of problems to try and sort out there. He has a squad. It's not small. It's full of a lot of players who, again, it's similar to what United have had, and Solskjaer has done such a good job at clearing out a lot of deadwood. But Arsenal have so much deadwood, so much players that came in. They were bought without a clear idea in mind for what they were being brought in for. And it seems like the hands of 2 or 3 different people with different ideas, have 2 or 3 people with different ideas have had their hands in the building of this current Arsenal squad. And it's not like Arteta has the resources and the backing to just say, okay, well, we need to change 5 or 6 players, they need to be out the door, and we need 5 or 6 in. He doesn't seem to be given the license to do that at all. So I think Arteta, I think he needs time. I think he did show last season that he has a tactical plan. I think he got praised for it a little too much, but he definitely has his ideas, and I think it looked like if he has a settled side, he can be somewhat successful with them. I don't think it's fair to judge him yet on whether or not he will be successful in the long term, because, like I said, he hasn't been able to really get his players in and get his squad that he thinks can sustain his style of play over a season. There's mentality issues to overcome there, like we touched upon, and I think from Arsenal to get where they want to be from where they were requires 2 to 3 years. I think they have to do something similar to what United have done with Solskjaer and say, okay, we have a 3-year plan and it's going to take 3 years. There's no shortcut. And I think that's what Arsenal need to set out to do if they haven't already. That might be what they're doing right now, and that might be why they never seem to jerk under the pressure when a lot of people were calling for Arteta's head. So maybe that is what they're doing, and maybe they will back him, if not likely in January, but in the summer. We'll see. But I think Arteta needs that if he's gonna have a fair crack of the whip. Because I don't think it's fair to judge him so far on what we've seen. I think he deserves a bit more time. So moving on, last topic of discussion. Manchester United play Liverpool this Sunday in the Premier League. United are obviously went top after that 1-0 win over Burnley, despite the best efforts of Kevin Friend, the referee, to stop us. We managed to get the win and sit 3 points clear. No more games in hand, none of that, just 3 points clear Liverpool, and we go to Anfield this Sunday. Now, United are top, like I said, but I'm still seeing a lot of criticism for United, for Solskjaer, by certain sections of the media still. Not going to point the finger at anyone yet, but I consistently listen to a few different media outlets on football, and there's still this message that he's relying on certain individuals, that Pochettino should have been gotten, and now he's gone to PSG, and that United have missed out. This idea that United are gonna drop off. I saw someone, a certain former Irish international, say that on Sky Sports today, that United are in a false position. They're gonna drop off. You're never in a false position in the league, mate. It's the league. You are where you deserve to be. Now, if he's trying to say that he doesn't think United can sustain it and stay there, fair enough. That's a fair opinion. I'm of the opinion that we're not going to win the league anyway. But to say United are in a false position is ridiculous. We've got the most points. That's how it works. That's how the league works. That's how you decide who finishes where at the end of a season. Is who has the most points. You have more points than them, cool, you're above them. We have the most points, we're top of the table. It's not by fluke. City and Liverpool, as well as any other team up there you want to mention, have dropped points you wouldn't expect them to this season. But not only is that a result of the lack of pre-season, like I mentioned earlier, but we see this with every high-level team that achieves a lot and wins what City and Liverpool have won. There is always a drop-off after 2 to 3 years. Now, remember, Liverpool last year won the league in an absolute canter. I think they got 99 points. The season before that, they got 97 points and were very unlucky to lose out to a City team who were just 1 point better. And the year before that, they won the Champions League. They won the Champions League when they got to 97 points and finished second. The year before that, they got to the Champions League final and lost to Real Madrid. So that was, if you take it from the January of 2018, it would have been. So they get to the final in 2018. They get to the final again in 2019 and come second to City in the league. Win the Champions League, and then in the following season they have another incredible season domestically anyway, and they win the Premier League by a canter. They're way ahead of everyone else. They're 99 points. Brilliant. That's 2.5 solid years of being flat out at their highest level of exertion. Their team was pretty much the same from that point onwards. For 2.5 years you could pretty much pick the team as soon as Van Dijk came in that January and made a solid difference. Teams are always due a drop off, like I said, after 2 or 3 years, where the level comes down a bit. That doesn't mean they stop winning things necessarily. It depends on what other teams around them do, if they do enough to take advantage of that. And City, we saw the same thing with City. Obviously, Pep Guardiola's second season, they have that 100 points at the end of the 2018 season. The season after that, they win the league again. Like I said, 98 points, finishing one point ahead of Liverpool. And then last season, they dropped off. And you could see it in the way they played. They weren't counter-pressing like they used to. And because the energy levels are very, very, very hard to sustain for longer than that time. Even with Sir Alex Ferguson, he would typically expect to win the league 2 to 3 times in a row with a certain team, and then he'd start to rebuild again. It's the idea of game theory. If anyone hasn't heard that before, isn't sure what it is, a TIFO football channel on YouTube do a great explanation of it. TIFO are a good channel. They do a lot of good stuff. I like their stuff. But they do a video on game theory, which explains what Sir Alex used to do at Manchester United and how he had that team with Bruce and Cantona and Mark Hughes. They won the league 4 out of 5 years, and then he started to rebuild, and there was a year where Arsenal won the double and United looked way behind them, and then United came back and won the treble the next season, and then they won the league again and the league again, and then again some personnel needed changing. They started to rebuild again, and in those rebuilding times they can win a league title. Sir Alex teams did do that as well, but they're not what they were at the peak of their powers, and they're building up to build up this next great team. And of course, after the treble team and what they did in the following years, he built another team around Rooney and Ronaldo and the likes, and we had that stretch from 2007 to 2009 where we won another 3 titles in a row, won a Champions League, got to another couple of Champions League finals, only to come up against that Barcelona team. And then you can't exactly say he did a rebuild after that. I think there was a lot of Glazer influence after that, but negative Glazer influence, I should say. But Fergie decided to hang up his hat not long after that. And Manchester City and Liverpool, I think, are definitely City. And again, either of them could easily win the league this season, easily. So I'm not saying they're done, but I am saying they are on a come down from those heights they reached, and that Liverpool, I think, I do think they need to start rebuilding a little bit and rejigging a little bit of their system. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 1 or 2 personnel changes that are a bit shocking. For example, it wouldn't surprise me too much if they let Salah go and brought in someone else, or else maybe Diogo Jota is good enough to take his spot. Just to freshen things up and look to build a new team and go again, if Klopp is allowed to do that, which I'm sure he will be. I think their midfield could do some restructuring as well. It looks like Gini Wijnaldum might go this summer. I believe his contract is up, or at least only has a year left on it, one or the other. And so because of that, they aren't hitting the heights that they were before. And there is an opportunity for other clubs to come in and challenge. Now, Manchester City, on the other hand, don't really do rebuilding, do they? They just get the checkbook out and they buy whoever they want to buy. I was a bit surprised that Pep Guardiola extended his contract. Excuse me. I expected him to leave at the end of this season. It looks like he's going to stick around for at least another year, which surprises me a bit. He even said himself previously that he thinks after 3 or 4 years you should leave because the team are sick of listening to you. But if you're at Manchester City and you can buy a whole new team anyway, does it matter? Maybe that's what his thinking is. Whoever doesn't listen to me can go and I'll just replace you. But Manchester United are obviously the team challenging them the most at this moment in time. I do think, and this has been reported obviously by a few people, particularly the guys over at The Athletic, who've done a great job, who do a great job reporting on Man United, have said that, and they said this at the time, that Solskjaer proposed a 3-year plan to Ed Woodward when he got the permanent job, which is almost 2 years ago now. And that 3-year plan was basically to almost knock the house down and start again in terms of the squad, and to come to try and reach the peak of its powers in its 3rd season and challenge for the league title then, which should subsequently be at a time where City and Liverpool were dropping off. And I don't think this season, this is Solskjaer's 2nd full season, I don't think this season was a season that Ole expected to be challenging for the title. I think he still thought Liverpool and Manchester City would be too strong, and that might well prove to be the case. I think it probably will. Ultimately, when we get to 38 games, we're only on 17 now. But it is progress to just be in the picture at this time. And if we can hang around in the picture for the next 10 to 12 games, that's serious progress. And even if we finish 3rd again like we did last season, but we've been in the title race picture a lot more. We were never in it last year. So if we are even in it just for a stretch this season, and we solidly finish 3rd and easily qualify for the Champions League next season, that is progress. Then, if Ole is back properly in the summer, you get the right names in. I think Jadon Sancho would make a huge difference to this team. I think another a proper defensive midfielder to ultimately replace Matic, although Matic has been very good of late. And then maybe a centre back. It really depends on Bailly's fitness, and maybe an alternative option at right back, just as we brought Tellez in to dovetail with Shaw in terms of who starts, and a different option, more attacking option at left fullback. We could do it the same thing at right back. I think that would make the world of difference. If Paul Pogba goes, you're going to have to replace him. Otherwise, we're very heavily reliant on Bruno. Now, maybe Donny van de Beek is that replacement. Maybe he can do the job. Maybe that is the idea from Solskjaer. Too early to tell. But if we got the right signings, which is still a big if because we have the Glazers as owners and Ed Woodward in the position he's in, then they should be ready to properly challenge next year, and might even go into next year as favourites, depending on how the rest of this season goes and how the summer goes. So that was the plan, and at the moment I think United are perfectly on target, and that is why I, for one, have never really understood this high level of criticism for Solskjaer. I'm not saying he's been absolutely perfect. The exit from the Champions League was not acceptable, but I never for a minute thought he should be sacked for that, because the overall progression of the team, from where we were even under Van Gaal and then under Mourinho, is night and day. We really do. This is the first time I've enjoyed looking forward and watching Manchester United games since Fergie, really. It was dour and terrible under Moyes. It was boring and just like tepid under Van Gaal, and it was painstakingly blunt under Mourinho. You just wanted to bash your head against the wall and wonder why we weren't having more of a go at teams. And at least Solskjaer does that. At least we walk away from games. Yeah, sometimes we might not play well, but we think, all right, we had a bit of a go at them there. We had a bit of a punch to us. You rarely walk away from a game under Solskjaer now thinking we didn't do anything going forward in that game. And the other question about consistency, I hear people say this all the time, that we're not consistent. We've been the most consistent team in the Premier League since January. It's a year now. Yes, we had the COVID break in between that, but it's still a full year's worth of games because we crammed them into a tight space. The run in the Premier League from then, we've been the best. So I don't understand this criticism of the lack of consistency. We went the whole post-lockdown without losing. I think we drew 3 and we won 8 or 9 of the last 11 or 12 games, whatever it was we had to play, and snuck into third place when we started, I think, 10 points behind Leicester and Chelsea, or maybe just Leicester, when lockdown initially started. So that was clearly a sign that this team could go for long stretches getting results. We've done it again now, having beaten Burnley the other night. We are 11 unbeaten, having won 9 and drawn 2. So even if we lose this game on Sunday against Liverpool, which could well happen, Liverpool are still a better team than Manchester United. We could lose this game at Anfield, and that wouldn't change the progression that Manchester United are making, because I would still have every confidence in them after that to go and win 8 of their next 10, which would still keep us in the picture. I don't have the same trepidation that I used to of what United is going to show up now, and are we going to drop stupid points at home? And sometimes we will, yeah, but that happened under Fergie. I remember the 2010-11 season. We got all the way to February unbeaten, and then Wolves, I think, beat us 2-1 away from home, and we went on to win the league that season. But we drew, I think it was 11 games or something like that, and lost 3. Wasn't a great Premier League season. I think we only won the league by 80 or 81 points that season. Like, yes, we're not going to hit the heights this season, and maybe not even next season, that Liverpool and City have in the last couple of years. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing the right things. We're not going the right direction. At the end of the day, you have to look at, are we beating the teams around us? Are we up? Are we where we should be? And we're first. So how can anyone look back on that and say, yeah, but it's not really first, is it? Yeah, it is first. Literally first. More points equals first. More points than anyone else. But to be honest, at the end of the day, I think I'd rather have all these people talking absolute nonsense. I think it works better for Manchester United. I think we play better. We generally have a better feel about us when we're a bit of the underdog, when people are still saying, nah. I think it suits us right now because we are the underdog. We're not as good as City or Liverpool yet. I think we could be if we get our summer transfer window right, as I said before. But we're not right now at this moment in time. So it suits us. Keep giving us that underdog tag because I think it suits us at the moment. I think we work well with this mentality that people don't think we're supposed to be here. Fine. Good. I don't understand it, but keep doing what you're doing. Yeah. So as I said, I fully expect United to go here, and I think we'll go with the 4-2-3-1 again. I think you'll see Sean Wan-Bissaka play a fullback, Maguire and Bailly a centre back, De Gea in net. I think you'll see Fred McTominay come in again, playing the double pivot. I think you'll see Paul Pogba playing the left wing at the 4-2-3-1. Bruno at number 10. I think Rashford will be at on the right wing. And then I think Martial will likely start up top, although I wouldn't be surprised if it's Cavani. But yeah, I think that's the team that Solskjaer is going to go with. It might be a midfield diamond, but you could play the same players and just shift the midfield around to a diamond with Bruno at the top and Pogba and probably McTominay box to box, and then Fred sitting, and then Rashford and Martial up top. That could happen too, but I think it'll be a 4-2-3-1 with Pogba on the left wing. You have to go and try and win the game. Obviously, you can't just go there and get a draw. I always want to see United try and win games. I don't care what game it is. I can't stand when we settle for draws. I don't know if it's because I was spoiled when I was younger, being a Manchester United fan. But a draw to me, a draw is pretty much a loss. But in this game, when you're against Liverpool, you have that 3-point lead at the top of the table, and you're going to Anfield. Will I be disappointed if we walk away with a draw? Not at all. No. Obviously, it depends on how the game goes, and if you miss chances and think, we should have won that, then it's a bit of a different feeling. For example, I went into that stretch of games from Sheffield United onwards. So after we played City, I thought if we win 4 and draw 1 of those next 5 games, we'll be in a really good position. And I looked at the games and I thought, yeah, beat Sheffield United, beat Leeds, maybe draw again away to Leicester, beat Wolves and beat Villa at home. Easier said than done. But if we do that, then I think we're on the right track. And we did that. It's exactly what happened. But the way that Leicester game went, we should have won it. And we let ourselves down. So it depends. Like I said, I was happy to get a draw 2 weeks before that game started. But once the game finished, I thought we should have won that. So it depends on how the game goes. But a draw away to Liverpool at Anfield, you keep 3 points ahead of them. You maybe start to make them think that we're real challengers. If they don't already, which actually I believe they do because of the amount of nonsense that Klopp has been talking in the press about us. I don't know why he has to bring us up. I think you make them maybe think that we're a real challenger, and they start to look out for our results, and they start to think, we have to play them again obviously this season at Old Trafford. We haven't played them once yet, so it puts a bit more pressure maybe on them to catch up before they play us at Old Trafford. Now 3 points is not a big gap. Obviously that can change in one game week. A win would do a lot more damage than a draw, but a draw would be a good result. It would be solid, and you move on and you try again, win 4 of the next 5 or 8 of the next 10, whatever it might be, and you'll keep yourself right in the hunt. And then we'll see where we are after that. But if we lose, it's not the end of the world. I think anybody who's going to come away from a loss and think, see, not good enough, Ole has to go. I'm going to tell you right now, before the game even kicks off, you're wrong. It depends on how we bounce back from that loss. Remember, we are not favourites to win this Premier League. Liverpool and City are both favoured ahead of us, and rightly so. So if we lose this game, again, it can depend on the manner of the defeat, but it does not stop the progression that we're making. It does not stop us in our tracks. It's a bump in the road. It's one we want to avoid, but it does not stop our progression. United are on the right track. I've been saying that for a long time. I'm not someone who's just jumping on the bandwagon, which I think some people are. I've always backed Ole because I could see the difference in the mentality that he's been making to the squad. I could feel the difference there's a different feel about the team for United fans than there was under Mourinho and Van Gaal. We actually like our team again, which is saying a lot because we didn't for a good while. And I think that United are a weird club in a way. We've only ever had sustained success under two men. So Matt Busby and Sir Alex Ferguson. And we're a weird club in that we have the spotlight on United is bigger than it is anywhere else. You've got more pressure. And we play in a bit of a different league to our opponents. And what I mean by that is so many teams consider Manchester United a rival. If not their biggest rival, we're their second biggest rival. Man City, you ask them who do they want to beat more than anyone, it's United. Who do Liverpool want to beat more than anyone, it's United. Who do Leeds want to beat more than anyone, it's United. Newcastle have Sunderland, but after that they want to beat United. Everton have Liverpool, but after that they want to beat United. Arsenal and Spurs have each other. After that they want to beat United. Chelsea have their two London rivals. After that they want to beat United. So it's a different beast being a Manchester United manager and playing for Manchester United. It takes a certain mentality. Solskjaer knows what that mentality is. And not only does he have it, but he's changing the squad for the better to incorporate players that have it, and they understand that. Last thing I'll touch upon is that I believe I know why so many Manchester United fans, so-called, are still calling for Ole's head, or still don't believe that he's the right man in the long term. They look across at our rivals and they look at Pep and Klopp and they think, that's what we should have. Someone like him. Pep and Klopp are idealists. They have their way of playing. It's synonymous with them. They invented it to a large degree. Klopp with his gegenpressing, Pep with his possession football, his positional play, juego de posición. I think I said that wrong, sorry. They're synonymous with that style of play, and their philosophies have been the dominant philosophies of the last decade. Not only in England, but when they were both in Germany, and obviously Pep with Barcelona. And they have been the two managers more than any in the last decade that have gone head to head. They've had this meeting of the minds. They've had this meeting of philosophies, and it's blown most of the teams out of the water. Having said that, the team that won the most Champions Leagues in that decade were Real Madrid. Real Madrid did not have a clearly defined philosophy. They had a lot of big players who played with a freedom and what would you call it? They played with a flair and an openness, and they did it so well that they dominated the Champions League. They didn't win a lot of league titles in that space of time, but they won their favourite trophy, the Champions League. Without an ideal, really, without a very clearly defined style of play. And Manchester United are a little similar to Real Madrid in that way, in that under Fergie, I don't think Fergie was an idealist. I think he always wanted attacking football, but he didn't have this one ideal, this plan A, that if we don't do it well, we just have to come back and do it better. We don't go to a plan B. He went to a plan B if he needed to. So I don't think Manchester United need to have this style of manager to be successful. And also, if you get rid of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, let's say, besides Pep and Klopp, who do you bring in that's going to have an ideal or philosophy that's going to match theirs and beat it? A lot of these United fans, they're not happy because the press, the people in the press or their favourite tactical analyst isn't breaking United down and showing, oh, look at the way they do this and the way they talk about Pep Guardiola's teams and their positional play and the way they occupy half spaces and create chances from there, or the way Liverpool set pressing traps all over the pitch, and the way they counter-attack once they win the ball, and the way their fullbacks get involved, and the attacking outlet that they give them. They don't see the exact same critiques of United, and they think that automatically means Solskjaer is not as good. Now, maybe he isn't on that tactical level, but one thing Solskjaer has absolutely proven in this time is that he knows how to counteract many of these teams very, very well. He can switch up his team to counteract a team's style of play and poke holes through their structure, and he's done that. He's beaten Pep Guardiola 3 times out of 5 games, I think it is. Okay, he's lost the other 2. I'm not sitting here saying that means he's better than Pep. It's not what I'm saying. But he's won 3 times against Pep in the last 2 years. He's yet to beat Klopp, but United were the first team to stop Liverpool from winning last year when they made that phenomenal start to the season, and we probably should have won that game. We threw that away a little bit as well, and we were very depleted at the time. We had no Martial, we had no Pogba. We were very threadbare at the time, but all they came up with a tactical plan to counteract them, and it largely worked. And he did that against PSG in when he was the interim boss. We beat Chelsea, I think, 3 times last season as well. He beat Pochettino Spurs at least once. Can't remember what happened last season. Oh, we didn't play Pochettino last season. Mourinho was in, and he beat Mourinho Spurs. Now, obviously, this season they caught us on a bad day and beat us 6-1. But like I said earlier, I think United's poor form at the start of the season was largely down to the lack of pre-season, and I think that was shown in Manchester City's form as well, and Wolves, who went into the Europa League in August as well. It's no coincidence now too that those teams have resumed a level of normality since late October, early November, when they finally got up to speed and got through their pre-season phase, as it were. So that is the main thing that I see when I read between the lines of what people are angry about and what makes them not believe in Solskjaer. But you can't deny his level of man management in that time. His man management has been fantastic, and the way he's seen Deadwood out the door and rehabilitated some players, brought them back into the fold, and they've looked like themselves again. Players like Matic and Fred. We all thought Fred was a waste of money. Turns out he's a very good player. Paul Pogba, even with the nonsense that still goes on with his agent speaking for him, the way he's handled Pogba and the performances that Pogba's put in recently show an incredible amount of man management from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He's gotten the best out of Anthony Martial. I still think Martial has a lot to offer and still needs to be more consistent, but the best we've seen of Martial since he came has been under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Particularly after the lockdown, I thought Martial was our best player in that period in the Premier League. I thought he was superb. He really looked like a proper number 9 in that time. He hasn't quite recaptured that form since, but I hope he does. I hope he does soon. Marcus Rashford's playing his best football that he's played since coming through. That could just be a maturity thing as well. But Luke Shaw has, I still have a lot of doubts about Luke Shaw, but he's definitely been the best that he's been since he arrived under Ole. Sorry, I should say since that injury he had, because he was very good for a stretch under Van Gaal. But he's rehabilitated Luke Shaw in that sense. Eric Bailly is now fulfilling the role that we all thought he could for 4 years, and hopefully, fingers crossed, he can stay injury free, because he is a vital. If he stays injury free and he gets to a point where he's playing week in, week out for 6 to 12 months, then we probably don't need to go out and buy a centre back, because he can be world class, and I don't say that lightly. He has all the tools, Eric Bailly. But yeah, as I was saying, I think Solskjaer's man management has been superb. I don't think there's a single question about that. And like I said, he can counteract almost any system we come up against. And now he has shown in this last 11 games, in those 11 or 12 games that we played after lockdown, and basically our overall record from now back to last January, that he can get a team to sustain form and win mostly week in, week out. Yes, we still drop points at times, but I think the improvement is evident. I think he deserves the backing of the Manchester United fans, because if this isn't a team and a manager that you want to get behind, then I don't know why you support Manchester United. It was a big job that Ole undertook when he came in, a big job, and it's a 3-year plan, and we are right on track to be where he wants to be after those 3 years. So yeah, I think he's doing a good job, and whether we win or lose this game, he's still doing a good job, and he should still be backed 100%. So roll on Anfield this Sunday. May the best team win. Not really, actually, I just want United to win. A penalty by Bruno Fernandes in the 10th minute of added time would be superb. After the final whistle, preferably. Like Brighton. Alright, thank you very much for listening. Hoping to make this a weekly thing. Maybe twice a week. See what I want to do. Talking all things football. I am a coach as well, so I might do a bit of coaching and analysis type stuff at times. But yeah, if you've listened to all of this, thank you very much. I've rambled on for an hour and a half now. So yeah, if you want to subscribe, please do. If not, no problem. Thanks very much.